Hey, you're listening to Stop the Scroll, a social media marketing podcast, and I'm your host, Heidi Schmidt. I'm a social media strategist and agency owner with over 15 years of marketing experiences helping businesses grow online. We'll be diving into what you need to know so that you can show up confidently online without the overwhelm. Get your notebook ready to jot down some amazing marketing gems, and let's dive into it. Welcome back to another episode of Stop the Scroll with me, your host, Heidi Schmidt, marketing strategist and agency owner. Welcome back. I wanted to dive into something, and this is something that I hear a lot, especially from business owners or entrepreneurs, solopreneurs who don't really understand the difference between marketing and sales. I'm going to say something. It's going to be a little controversial, and I might get a little bit of flack for it. Marketing is not your sales team. I'm just going to leave that right there for now. Marketing is not your sales team. Why I'm saying that is that I often get the comment like, oh, if I outsource my social media to you, I need X number of sales to make it worth it. That's not how this works. And in the words of my son, in the words of my 11-year-old, that's not how marketing ROI works, bruh. That's not how any of this works. Like, marketing is not your sales team. Chances are, if you're listening to this, I know that my audience tends to be a lot of smaller business owners. Chances are you are your sales team. So here's the deal. Marketing and sales are two very different things. They have two very, very different purposes. And I have worked with sales teams of all sizes. And ultimately, marketing brings you the leads. We build the brand awareness. We build the audience. My coach had a great analogy the other day in a masterclass that I was in, and she was talking to me about something. Ultimately, it is marketing's job to make the trade show booth really pretty, to get the people to the trade show booth. It is not our job to sell the things. I mean, we can certainly share the value of the things that we are selling. We tell that story. We are storytellers. We are creatives. We build the audience who wants to throw the money out the window. I'm thinking of that GIF with like the kid just like throwing the money out the window. So my job, any marketer that you work with, any marketer that you outsource to, any marketer that you bring onto your team, their job is to build the brand awareness. Their job is to tell the story, tell the brand story, and create those meaningful interactives that makes them want to convert. Now, your job is to sell. Because I, marketer, I bring the horse to the water. You, salesperson, business owner, convince the horse to drink the water. I can bring the horse to the water, but I can't force the horse to drink. I can drive the traffic to the website, but if the website's garbage and doesn't tell your brand story in a meaningful way, then I can't make the visitors convert. You see how this works? And there's lots of ways to measure the effectiveness of marketing. Whether it's marketing qualified leads, which if you have a bigger team, you're probably looking at like, hey, how many leads is marketing bringing in that are actually qualified? Someone can fill out a form on a website to subscribe to a newsletter. That doesn't mean that they're a qualified lead. Honestly, if you're a service provider, how do you want to measure these? Probably the discovery calls, not just the form submissions themselves, but like the meaningful form submissions, the calls that you get that are like discovery calls. I know as a service provider myself, selling outsourced marketing services, that the months when I show up in my business, the months that I am super effective with email, with blogging, with showing up on my social consistently, like I get lots of leads. On months like this past month when it was my birthday, I bought a car, lost a couple of clients, my cat died. Like, it was a big old hot mess. We traveled for a weekend. I did not get as many leads, but I was not showing up. And that was kind of intentional. Like, kind of took a step back so that I could enjoy my birthday. And then, we had this family trip, and then my cat died. And there is something to be said. And I have someone that I know who I really want to bring on to the podcast to talk about this. Like, how do you consistently show up for yourself and your business when you're grieving? Because it's hard. When you're a solopreneur, when you're a business owner, like, it's hard to show up, man. Like, the mental load is exhausting. But I know that if I don't show up, like, meh, there ain't going to be no one on my digital trade show booth. No one's going to be showing up. So typically, what I look for when I'm measuring if marketing is going to be effective, and there are different channels that we market ourselves through social media, through email, through website. How do we measure if those are being effective? And this is going to be a whole other podcast episode eventually, but I'm going to stick to social media because that's my bread and butter. Social media, I look at audience growth. I want to see that, hey, we're getting more people to come to our digital booth, our digital trade show booth. I want more people to come out, to follow us, to want to know more about our brand. That's what audience growth tells me. And yeah, Adam Mosseri can say like, oh, the number of followers that you have on LinkedIn doesn't really matter. Yes and no. Yes, it does, because it tells me brand awareness. It tells me that more people are finding out about me, that care enough to want to follow me, that want to learn more about what I do or my clients do. So yeah, follower count does matter. Less so on Facebook because no one follows pages anymore because the feeds are a dumpster fire. But that's neither here nor there. We can talk about that later, about how Facebook is a flippin' dumpster fire. I look at engagement because people engage with us, with our content, when they like it, when it speaks to them, when they connect with it. We want to be connecting with our audience, right? Absolutely. We want people to give a crap about what we're saying. We want them to engage with it. And so likes and shares and saves and all of those things, they all matter. They do matter. They don't matter individually. Like one like on a post is not going to make or break your marketing, or a post with 0 likes is not going to make or break your marketing. What it tells us is, hey, that wasn't super engaging. Let's pivot. Let's pivot that story. Let's maybe redo it, but maybe use a different image, or maybe the messaging would have been better on a reel if it was a carousel, like we look at why didn't this work instead of like, oh, nothing's working. And then we look at the conversion metrics that I tend to look at for my clients are like, okay, what's the traffic to your website? What are the profile views that you're getting on Instagram? Because ultimately, if people want to click through to your website, they have to go to your profile. So we want to look at the profile views because that shows that people actually want to learn more about us, right? None of those are sales metrics. I don't know that I have ever had a client that, well, actually, no. I do have clients who can attribute sales directly back to what we do on social media. Like someone saying like, oh, I saw your post on social media, it really spoke to me. And then they scheduled a discovery call and, hey, that post is what made me finally take the leap. So yeah, social media does drive sales, but it's harder to attribute. But don't discount it. Please don't discount it. Put me out of a job. So why ultimately is marketing not your sales team? Like, marketing isn't there to convert the people. Like, we convert the people, we get them into the funnel. Okay, now they're in the sales funnel here. But ultimately, marketing is that team, that person, those activities, whatever you're doing to build your brand awareness, to tell your brand story. So, sales takes that audience and they take that story and they turn it into sales. That's your sales activity. So all of my clients, when I talk to them, I'm like, okay, what else are you doing? And we can wax poetic about how you should not rely just on social media or just on email or just on your website to do all of the sales things. That's not going to work for you. There's lots of reason why it's not going to work for you. I'm not going to dive into them here because I don't have all that time. But ultimately, you, business owner, are in charge of converting that audience into sales. You should be also think about like what you're doing offline. What are your offline marketing activities that you're also doing to build that audience, to connect with that audience? Because there is something to be said about offline connections. Now, there's that whole segment of online businesses, coaches, all those things. But ultimately, like if your audience is local, which for many service providers it is, though not entirely all local, but mostly local, how are you connecting to your audience? So I have a new client who said, hey, I get a lot of my clients when I'm out speaking and doing speaking engagements. Okay, then we want to make sure that we're using social media to promote those activities that you're doing offline if we know that people are more likely to convert when they connect with you in person. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm being a little preachy here. Anyhow, as I said before, I can bring the horse to water, but I cannot force the horse to drink. That's your job. Don't force it. No one likes to be forced to do anything. So if you're not making sales, if your sales numbers are down, if you're like, oh my God, freaking out, like, look at the overall, like, peel the onion layers back. Are your social accounts growing consistently? Are you growing that brand audience consistently? Are you getting engagement? Is your engagement growing? Are you driving traffic to your website? Because if you're not driving traffic to your website, but your audience is growing and you have decent engagement, like, okay, maybe we need to tweak the calls to action. There are things that we can do. Like, if these aren't all growing together, then we want to look at, like, how do we tweak the actions of marketing to be more effective at driving people for sales? And getting bigger picture, if you're not getting sales, if you're not closing those deals, think bigger picture. Do you have clarity on your purpose? What is your why? Like, why are you in business? Why should people buy from you? If you can't tell the story of what you do is so valuable, or or who you're actually marketing to, every month I talk to you client XYZ and you're telling me your offerings or your audience or whatever has changed every other month, then there is no way for marketing to be effective. I saw this Facebook post a couple of days ago that was talking someone who was working for a startup, and she said that every 6 weeks we completely pivot. And so I spend all of this effort batching content and getting campaigns ready. And then here I am 10 days out from a 4-week vacation, and my boss just pivoted. I've spent the past 2 months prepping for this leave and getting all this content batched and all these campaigns ready to go. And I've coordinated with the team. And now, like, none of it's effective. We can't use any of it because he's pivoted again. That is so frustrating to marketing because here's the thing, marketing doesn't happen overnight. Marketing is a long game. Even ads, which can deliver faster results, are a long game. Facebook ads take time to understand who you are and who your audience is. You got to give that a few days, and the more ads you run, the more effective they become. But if you say after a week, well, oh, I haven't gotten anything from that, then it's not working, you're discounting the opportunity of, say, Facebook advertising because you're not being patient. Your impatience is going to be your downfall here, and it's going to make your marketing super ineffective. So, similarly, I have worked with clients like that who are always changing who they're marketing to, or they're changing their service offerings, or they're changing their why, or whatever it is. And it's really, really tough for marketing. And the numbers show, because ultimately you start building this audience, you start your brand awareness around the value that you offer, your why. You want to connect with that audience. You want to tell your story. You want to show up authentically and build those connections. And then 3 months later, you're going to say, oh, well, that audience isn't really converting yet. So I think I'm going to change the whole entire thing. That audience who is finally getting warmed up and starting to engage with your content regularly is now, well, what the F? Why am I going to follow her? So that audience kind of becomes stagnant. They're not going to engage with your content. And you have to start from scratch. Every brand exercise that you do when you first start your business should start in with one, what's your value prop? And I say this in my social media strategies also, like, what's your value? Like, what's your why? Why should people care about you? What's your differentiator? What differentiates you from, business ABC across the street who does the same thing as you? So thinking about that is super, super important when you're just getting started, or even when you think that you want to either rebrand or add a new offering. Like, think about the why. Like, why are you doing this? Are you just trying to generate more revenue? Because if you're just trying to generate more revenue, then maybe you should look at your current offerings and see how you can tweak that messaging to make your current offerings more appealing to your audience. Like, why aren't they buying? If you have proposals that aren't closing, like, why? What's the why? Is it the messaging? Is it that people don't understand your value? Like, what is it? So think about that before you completely pivot everything. This is the opportunity to survey your audience and find out what they want from you. What do they value? What are their pain points? Because sometimes we think we know our audience. And for a while, I thought I knew my audience. And then I was hearing the same thing over and over and over again from clients that came to me, which was, I don't have time to do my social media. I don't want to do my social media. Can you just do this for me? I know it's important, but I don't have the capacity. There are other things that I want to spend my time on. So that's my value add. Like, I make it easy for people who don't want to do their social media, who understand the value of it and the opportunity. Because if you don't understand the value of it, like thinking about this one lead that I got one time who owned a business and offered me $100 to do his social media. I seriously fell out of a chair when I saw it. Like, he texted me that and fell out of a chair laughing because it was such an insult. And I was like, you don't value what I do, so maybe you should just hire an intern. Because when you are willing to invest in your marketing, really get what you pay for. And I've learned this myself also. I have learned this myself also through the content creators that I've worked with. I like to think that I pay them pretty well because I value what they bring to me and how they save me time. So don't skimp on your marketing, especially if you're expecting big things from them. If you're expecting big results, like, be involved, be collaborative, share your ideas, and hopefully, if you have a great trusted marketing expert on your side, they will tell you, like, hey, pump the brakes. Let's see how this works first. But if you're super clear on your offerings and you're super clear who your audience is, like some of my clients are, like, we're going to get to your results because it's easy for us. It's easy for marketing to pick up all of those pieces and run with it when you have that kind of brand clarity. So get your service offerings into alignment, get super clear on what you do, how you do it, and why you do it, and how you help your audience. What are the problems that you solve for them? Because ultimately, without that clarity, your audience isn't going to understand the value that you bring. And then marketing's not going to be able to communicate that. They're not going to be able to tell that story. And there's not going to be any sales. Because, like I said, marketing is not your sales team. Bring the horse to the water. But if the water is really yucky and murky, like, no one's going to want to drink that. So having all of the pieces in place in your marketing, from your messaging to your audience to all of the tactical pieces, your website, your email plan, your social media marketing plan, all of those pieces work in tandem. And if they're not aligned, or if you keep changing the goalposts and changing the end goal, then nothing's going to be effective. So that's all for today. I hope this was helpful. If you found this helpful, please leave a review. Go ahead and follow me on Instagram at Heidi Schmidt Creative. Drop me a message on my website, www.heidijschmidt.com. Linked in the show notes. I would love to chat. If there's something that you want to learn more about, or if you would like to learn what it's like to work with me and my team to outsource your social media marketing, I would love to chat. Until next week, have a fantastic week and come back again for another great episode of Stop the Scroll.